Hi everyone, I'm Charlie and welcome to another daily Doctor Who YouTube video. Since it's Tuesday, then I will be ranking all the episodes in a certain Classic Who story. That's what I'm doing on Tuesdays now. And today, then it's going to be the third Doctor story, Doctor Who and the Silurians. So this is his second story as the third Doctor. John Pertwee plays the third Doctor in this. And it's the second story of his overall. And this is, for me, where he first clicked as the Doctor for me when he greeted that Silurian with the handshake. I thought that was very third Doctor-y. And yeah, I really like the story. I did a review on it a couple of days ago. I'd go and check that out. I'll leave one of those cards for it. And yeah, I really like this episode. So this features the third Doctor, companions Liz Shaw and Brigadier Lethbridge Stewart, and takes place during the Doctor's time on exile, and is basically, for those of you who haven't seen it, the plot's basically they're at an underground base trying to investigate a load of inexplicable power losses, and they come across this dinosaur puppet thing, who's actually just a distraction from the main villain, who are the Silurians, who are trying to get enough power to reawaken their species. This is the very first introduction of the Silurians, who will appear throughout Classic Who a lot in the future, like in Warriors of the Deep, and in New Who in episodes like The Hungry Earth and Cold Blood. So if you haven't seen this, and there will be spoilers, in terms of the main narrative for this series and the era as a whole, there's not any major spoilers, but if you just want to see the episode without knowing what's going to happen overall, then I'd recommend saving this video for when you have watched it. So yeah, I think this is a brilliant episode, and I did a review on it a couple of days ago. So let's get into this video. In 7th place, then, we have Episode 3. Episode 3, the main reason why it's in last is that not really much happens. I still like it. It's still a good episode, but there are much better episodes in this, and this is at its low point. I think it starts off quite good, goes down gradually, and then goes up really significantly, and kind of levels out towards the end. That's my opinion on this Classic Who story. And yeah, Episode 3 just doesn't really have that much going on. I think it's alright. That's the one word I'd use to describe this. It's okay. It does have a good chase scene where they're, driving all around those fields to try and find the person who's working with the Silurians. Eventually they do find him, and he's trying to hide loads of things from the Doctor. I thought that was really good, actually. But yeah, nothing really much happens, and I don't know. I thought, is this really all this story has to offer in Episode 3? But thankfully it picked up afterwards quite significantly, so there we go. In 6th place, then, we have Episode 2, only the second episode of this story, John Pertwee's 6th episode as the third Doctor, and this is a lot better than Episode 3. It has a similar sort of style, but the main reason I like it a little bit more is it's a cliffhanger. At the end, then, Liz is investigating the body that they found that had been killed by a Silurian, and we just saw a shot of her investigating it, and then the camera switches and we see these 3 eyes with a red one at the top, and we're thinking, what is this monster? And eventually it goes to attack her, and I feel really sorry for the people who were watching this live and had to wait 1 week for it to come out. So thankfully I got to see it pretty much instantly, but yeah, so I really like the cliffhanger, and I do like how we see a Silurian for the first time in this episode. Towards the start of this episode, we see a shot of a Silurian emerging from the caves, and yeah, I really like this episode, actually, and yeah, I think it's not as good as lots of the others obviously, but it's a bit of an improvement from Episode 3, just because of the whole cliffhanger thing. Next up, we have 5th place, Episode 4. Episode 4 is really good. I quite like this scene where he first meets the Silurian in a house. I think it was Episode 4, and he just goes up to it and shakes his hand and said, "How do you do?" I think that's very third Doctor-ish, and yeah, I thought that's where I clicked. That's where he clicked for me as the third Doctor. In Spearhead from Space, he didn't seem very Doctor-y, but this is where he fully got into character and was the Doctor to me. So yeah, this one has really good action actually. There's lots of sort of battles between Silurians themselves and UNIT and the Silurians. It's really good, and I do like how they're doing some more exploration of the caves. I think the caves are a much more interesting setting in the story to places like the underground base. I think the caves, they're just generally better, and by the end of this episode then we kind of know our own way around the caves, sort of, especially by episode 7 we're kind of familiarised with them. And I do quite like how the Doctor's, he's in the underground caves with the Silurians, not just doing science with Liz Shaw, who's also with him for part of this, actually. But yeah, this is an alright episode. Again, not that much happens, but I do quite like the cliffhanger where I'm pretty sure it's something like the Silurian says, "We will destroy you," and then sort of zaps him with his red eye. Thought that was a bit cheesy, a bit cringy, but it was still quite good, and I was very intrigued as to what happened next. Next up we have 4th place, Episode 1, the very first episode of Doctor Who and the Silurians, and I really enjoyed it. We start off in unit headquarters, and the Doctor's got a new car called, I'm pretty sure it's like Betty or Bessie? Yes, Bessie. And he's kind of fixing it, and then Liz gets a call from the Brigadier saying they need to go to this underground base. It's not really explained why that much, but they go there anyway in the car. And they arrive there, and immediately there's loads of mystery. We're wondering what's going on, why are there all these power losses? Because obviously, before getting this, I knew that, what a Silurian was because I'd seen New Who and other classic episodes, so I was kind of know what I was expecting. But at the time, people had no clue what Silurians were, so it was a lot of mystery and tension and build-up for the moment a few episodes later, where we actually saw a Silurian fully. This is a really great opening, actually, and the only criticism I have towards this episode, really, is the cliffhanger where he's in the caves and he sees that dinosaur. It's not the best dinosaur puppet, just like in Invasion of the Dinosaurs in Series 11, but I suppose it was 50 years ago, so I guess I've got to cut it some slack. In 3rd place, we have episode 6. This episode is very, very different to the rest of these, mainly because it involved a completely new plot twist that was introduced in episode 5, but this is like the aftermath of the plot twist, and it's really good. It involves a virus that Silurians have released into the country and is killing people across the globe. It's really fast-spreading epidemic, and it's a really interesting story. There's loads of new plot twists and revelations. The stakes are incredibly high, trying to find, I'm pretty sure he was Masters. He was running away because he didn't want them to notice he had the disease, even though they found out. And yeah, this is a very doctory episode. The Doctor's full character here, and the only criticism I have towards this episode is probably that we don't actually get to see many Silurians. Silurians are quite absent for lots of this episode, but there is kind of that conflict between themselves where the bad Silurians who want to reclaim Earth kill the one who's trying to negotiate with the Doctor, trying to figure out a plan so they can live in the deserts and things like that. I thought that was really interesting and gave insight as to not all of the monsters are bad, it's just the bad ones kill the good ones. I thought that was quite interesting. In 2nd place, we're getting on to some really good ones now. The finale of this story, Doctor Who and the Silurians, episode 7. I love this episode, along with most of the others, to be fair. This is an epic finale. I think the conclusion is a little bit confusing. We thought the Doctor's won, but then he hasn't, but he has, and it's just quite confusing. But overall, it ends up as the Doctor winning, sort of. It's quite confusing as well, because UNIT are bad. They're shown as they're bad people at the end when they blow up the Silurians, even though they were sort of being good and going back into hibernation for 50 years. But this is the first time the Doctor's actually seen UNIT as bad, not necessarily the best. And that last line where he said UNIT have murdered an entire intelligent species, that was actually really powerful, and this is the episode that made me not really like the Brigadier that much. I've never been a huge fan of the Brigadier, especially in earlier Classic Who. But yeah, this is still a really good finale to this story, and one I was quite satisfied with. Finally, we have 1st place, episode 5. I love this episode. It is brilliant. It's the third to last episode of this story, and it's just brilliant. There is nothing wrong with this episode whatsoever. It's mainly set in the Silurian caves, with the Doctor being imprisoned and he's got to try and work his way out. It finally gives us some sort of insight as to what happens after the cliffhanger at the end of episode 4, and the Doctor's not actually capable of doing much for lots of it. This is really good because it also shows the Doctor negotiating with that Silurian, the good one who wanted to live on the deserts and things like that, as opposed to the bad Silurians that we can see here that are just trying to reclaim Earth as their own. I thought Unit went into these caves a lot in this episode, trying to rescue the Doctor, and I just really, really like this episode. It's got an interesting setting underground in those caves. I really like the set design, and we're in the caves so much that, I don't know, we're really familiarised with them as well. I said that earlier. And I do quite like the cliffhanger, because towards the end of the episode, then the Silurians release the epidemic to distract the humans, and the Doctor and Liz need to work on a cure. I thought that was really good, and sets up episode 6 really nicely. So there we go, everyone. I hope you've enjoyed this ranking of Doctor Who and the Silurians episodes, and I'll leave another card here for the review of Doctor Who and the Silurians there, and stay tuned for tomorrow's video. Next time, what are my top 10 favourite Doctor Who episodes? Stay tuned tomorrow to find out what they are. See you then. Goodbye.